start. Good, good, good. We are good.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिचार्य अष्टोत्तरस श्री डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिचार्य अष्टोत्तरस श्री डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत श्री गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिगोर धाम की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर नगरी धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा मई जमुना मई की जय। तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shiva and Gauranga.
Jai, thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. And thank you everyone for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. I haven't heard from Maharaj, so he may be internationally situated somewhere. I don't know where he is, but usually he lets me know if he's not going to be here, and he hasn't let me know that today. So anyway, it's Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 in New York. And tonight we're finishing chapter, Canto 3, Chapter 30. Starting tonight with the last verse or next to last verse, text number 34. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Adhastan naralokasya yavatir yatanadaya kramasha samanukramya punar atra vrajechchuchihi. Having gone through all the miserable hellish conditions, and having passed in a regular order through the lowest forms of animal life prior to human birth, and having thus been purged of his sins, one is reborn again as a human being on this earth. Purport: just as a prisoner who has undergone troublesome prison life is set free again, the person who has always engaged in impious and mischievous activities is put into hellish conditions. And when he has undergone different hellish lives, namely those of lower animals like cats, dogs, and hogs, by the gradual process of evolution, he again comes back as a human being. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that even though a person engaged in the practice of the yoga system may not finish perfectly and may fall down for some reason or other, his next life as a human being is guaranteed. It is stated that such a person who has fallen from the path of yoga practice is given a chance in his next life to take birth in a very rich family or in a very pious family. It is interpreted that rich family refers to a big mercantile family, because generally people who engage in trade and mercantile business are very rich. One who engaged in the process of self-realization or connecting with the supreme absolute truth, but fell short, is allowed to take birth in such a rich family or in the family of pious brahmanas. Either way, he is guaranteed to appear in human society in his next life. It can be concluded that if someone is not willing to enter hellish life, as in tamasra or undhatamasra, then he must take to the process of Krishna consciousness, which is the first-class yoga system. Because even if one is unable to attain complete Krishna consciousness in this life, he is guaranteed at least to take his next birth in a human family. He cannot be sent into a hellish condition. Krishna consciousness is the purest life, and it protects all human beings from gliding down to hell to take birth in a family of dogs or hogs. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 30th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description by Lord Kapila of Adverse Fruit of Activities. Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here's your evolutionary process, the way it's actually going on. Consciousness is originally pure spiritually, but in contact with the modes of nature and the material world, it gets colored, contaminated, twisted around. And because of that, we act in ways that are against our own best interest, and the resultant actions and reactions follow, as Kapila Dev's been going through. First, he's gone through all the yoga system, how to achieve success, and then in this chapter, he's gone through the failure. This is the failure chapter, and it just goes on when we hear about the child in the womb in the next chapter. But it should be a cautionary tale for anyone who reads this. These are verses that sometimes it's very hard to hear all these things. It's very painful to hear the living entities getting dragged through here and there and subjected to all these torturous punishments. It's not easy to hear. At the same time, you see photos of Prabhupada looking through the fifth canto with a smile on his face. And why is that? It's because people need to hear about these things. These are the cautionary tales for people we need to know about these things, or else we'll think that, yeah, I'm good, you're good, I'm basically a good person. I'll just do what I feel like, do what feels good to me, and I won't hurt anybody, and I'll just go on with my life. It's not the way it works. There's a lot going on that we do not see, and especially we do not see what happens after death or before birth, and that's what's being illustrated in graphic detail here by Kapila Dev. We get to hear what happens after death. We get to hear before birth, and none of it is pretty. It's all a rough story. Nobody wants this. And then Prabhupada says at the end, even though it should be obvious, if one is not willing to enter hellish life, Krishna consciousness protects human beings from gliding down to hell. If this isn't a great advertisement for the process of Krishna consciousness, I don't know what is, because I remember my early exposure to Krishna consciousness, hearing about these things, thinking about my previous activities, thinking, I don't want the reactions to those activities. I guess Krishna consciousness looks like a pretty good option at this point in my life. Hare Krishna. So here we are. Panchatattva Prabhu has a hand up. Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah, I, I was thinking along the same lines, and I know it can be a bit, I don't want to be a bit of a bore describing one of my own experiences, but anyway, a few weeks after I had joined the temple, I'd kind of leaped right in, visited the temple and just started staying every night, and soon after quit my job, quit everything else, joined the temple, shaved up. And so a few weeks after that, I was having second thoughts, thinking, did I dive in too soon? And the temple president, I went to him with my troubled mind and said, I want you to read something. And he pulled down from the shelf a fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and turned to the chapter titled Description of the Hellish Planets and said, read this chapter and then come back to me. And I read that chapter, and perhaps it was also because of my good Catholic upbringing. I immediately recognized that, yeah, this makes complete sense to me. It makes complete sense that somebody could actually suffer severe reactions for all the nonsense that he or she does in this particular body, and that it could, come bearing down on him at the time of death. And I thought, no, I better stick around. I better stick around and try to make a resolution of this problem, at least, if not to become Krishna conscious.
Great, thanks for sharing. That's nice.
Sure. And, it's funny because that canto, I was told, some devotees just freaked them out. They just didn't know how to handle it when it came out. But it made sense to me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and what makes sense to me too, in addition to that point, which thank you for underscoring my earlier statements, is this word samanukramya, having gone through, and kramashah in a regular order. The process of evolution is described in the Bhagavatam as being an evolution of consciousness through the different species that are already existing. The species already exist. There's a hierarchy, and the consciousness of the living entity gradually goes up through all the species. To me, that makes sense because that's what happens essentially in our micro life, in the present life. Our consciousness starts out where in this baby body, the body changes. The consciousness hopefully changes along with the body. It becomes mature. And the same thing, there's a succession of living entities the succession of bodies that the living entity passes through. It's very symmetrical. It's very tidy. The idea of mechanistic evolution, people have a hard time actually explaining how that takes place, except vaguely, oh, it just gradually happens over billions and billions of years. Microbiologists would have a field day explaining how that just doesn't work because things are too complicated for that to happen. But here it's just, it's a gradual step-by-step process. Regarding living entities taking birth in lower forms, Gurudas posts a nice story of Prabhupada. He says, in Bhagavatam class yesterday, the speaker told the story of the boy who challenged Srila Prabhupada. What does it matter if I become a dog in the next life? I'll just be in the consciousness of a dog. Prabhupada responded with a touch of sarcasm. You have my blessing. Yeah, there's two instances of him saying that, one in the West and one in Bombay. And Maharaj tells the story because he was there for that encounter in Bombay. And Prabhupada says, you may think that is all right, but we do not think that is such a nice life. Saraswati Mata says, Pranams, if an animal receives the mercy of a devotee, does it get a human form of life in next life and so bypasses the evolutionary cycle? Also, I read on the back of a car, you are free to make your own choices, but you are not free from the consequences of those choices. That's a rare bumper sticker. Usually it's like, I heart my dog. I've heard that. I can't quote a Shastric reference for you in regard to your question there. But yes, and if an animal does receive the mercy of a devotee in the form of prasadam or the holy name, philosophy, Bhagavatam class is kind of off the charts for most pets. But yeah, I've heard that the human life is awaiting that fortunate creature. Maybe someone else can cite a Shastric reference for it, but none comes to mind right now. Although I've heard it. Panchatattva Prabhu, your hand is up. But we can't hear you.
I'm reminded of something I heard years ago about temple where I joined, Devasadan Mandir. There were a lot of ducks hanging around there. It's right near the Detroit River, and there's a little canal, U-shaped canal that comes down. Anyway, at that time, it was being frequented by a lot of ducks, and the ducks were getting prasadam on a daily basis. And a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada when he was visiting, what will happen to these ducks, Srila Prabhupada, because they're getting prasadam? Prabhupada said they will take a human birth in their next life.
Well, maybe it's true for ducks, but what about other species? We want to know. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Saraswati Mata says, thank you. We're starting a new chapter tonight. Mahesh Pandit Prabhu, since you're here, would you like to start us off with chapter 31?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, chapter 31 of third canto and text number 1. Title, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movement of the living entities. Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Karmana Daiva Netrena Jantur Deho Payatate Striya Pravishya Udaram Pumso Reta Karnashrayah. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. I think I have to read again. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. Okay, I think I have to change the place because people are coming. Hold on. I'll go inside. Okay. Very good. Sorry. Okay. All right. Translation. So we got through the translation. Purport. As stated in the last chapter, after suffering different kinds of hellish conditions, a man comes again to the human form of life. The same topic is continued in this chapter. In order to give particular type of human form to a person who has already suffered hellish life, the soul is transferred to the semen of a man who is just suitable to become his father. During sexual intercourse, the soul is transferred through the semen of the father into the mother's womb in order to produce a particular type of body. This process is applicable to all embodied living entities, but it is especially mentioned for the man who was transferred to the Andha-Timishra hell. After suffering there, when he who has had many types of hellish bodies, like those of dogs and hogs, is to come again to the human form, he is given the chance to take his birth in the same type of body from which he degraded himself to hell. Everything is done by the supervision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material nature supplies the body, but it does not under the direction of the super soul. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a living entity is wandering in this material world on a chariot made by material nature. The Supreme Lord, as super soul, is always present with the individual soul. He directs material nature to supply a particular type of body to the individual soul according to the result of his work, and the material nature supplies it. Here, one word, Reta Kanashya, is very significant because it indicates that it is not the semen of the man that creates life within the womb of a woman. Rather, the living entity, the soul, takes shelter in a particular in a particle of semen and is then pushed into the womb of a woman. Then the body develops. There is no possibility of creating a living entity without the presence of the soul simply by sexual intercourse. The materialistic theory that there is no soul and that a child is born simply by material combination of the sperm and ovum is not very feasible. It is unacceptable. This is a story of transmigration of the soul, and it's very nicely described by Kapil Dev, Personality of Godhead, son of Kadama Muni and Devahuti. It's very elaborately explained here by Prabhupada in his purport. The soul takes shelter in the womb of a mother, and that's where he develops because of the presence of the soul. If the soul is not there, then there is just simply the lump of flesh or something. Because of the presence of the soul, it develops or it grows. That we have to keep in mind. And along with the soul, there is also a super soul who guides you. The material nature gives the chariot, like material world on a chariot made by material nature. And it clearly says here that everything is done by the supervision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Karmana Daiva Netrena. There's also a verse in Bhagavad Gita similar to this. I don't recall, but it says Karmana Daiva Netrena. Something. So, under the supervision of the higher authority, Karmana Daiva Netrena, higher authority, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material nature supplies the body, but it does so under the direction of the super soul. So here material nature is involved, and the Krishna is also involved, the super soul, as a super soul. And this is very nice also. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a living entity is wandering in this material world on a chariot made by material nature. So we are all having a chariot, our physical body, and as a soul, we are riding on that. Like example is given like a car, and man is driving the car. Interesting how we go through so much trouble, and then finally we get this human form of life. And if we not live up to that, then our chance is, we miss the chance of getting out of this birth and death cycle. 8.4 million, 84 lakh of species of life. Can you imagine? And according to your karma, the way you behaved, or you get that species of life, and then from there on, you just go round and round. Unless and until you get some mercy from a devotee. Otherwise, you have to go through the whole process of transmigration. Okay. And anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Panchatattva Prabhu says that Prabhupada often quoted the first couplet of this verse. Yeah, Karmana Daiva Netrena. This is how it works. Saraswati Mata says, mentioned here that after the soul undergoes punishment in the hellish planets, then they receive the same type of human body from which they had originally degraded themselves. So this looks like a reset button where that soul is in the same spot as before, but where they can make different pious acts or degrade themselves again, which puts them in the same cycle of punishment again. Does that sound right, Prabhu?
When I read that, I said, wow, what a calculations they are all made. I mean, somebody's keeping eye on all these things, you know. But when I read that, it's amazing how somebody remembers you did this before, and after a long time, and then you put into the same position and start all over again. So also, when we do Krishna consciousness activities, if somehow or other we don't finish, if we finish 15 or 20%, then next life you go on to from 21%. So yeah, that seems right. So similarly, if after going through all these cycles of birth and death through different species of life, it's obvious, or we can tell that yes, you started out from that position, and you start from that same position again. Interesting.
Krishna, Krishna. Panchatattva Prabhu, please go ahead.
Sorry, it takes me a little while to do this thing with the phone. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, that he goes the sinful living in it, he goes to the hellish planets, he suffers there. Then he has to pass through all these different species of life, depending on how far down he fell in the evolutionary ladder, if you will. Then he comes right back to where he made his last big mistake. It's almost like, it's like he's being given the examination again and again. Okay, you're back to where you were. You're gonna make the same mistake. And more often than not, unless the intervention of a pure devotee or a saintly person happens, he's again in a precarious position and ready to fall down. It's actually a really sad narrative, isn't it? And the only light comes when they get the association of a saintly person or devotees. And that's the good fortune in Kali Yuga now, I guess. There are so many saintly persons moving about the earth, distributing books, chanting, giving people a chance to have some contact with Krishna consciousness, so that even a little bit of Jnata Sukriti, unknown transcendental pious activities takes place. Oh, these people are nice. Oh, this tastes very good. Thank you for this sweet that you gave me. I really appreciate it. Oh, or as Prabhupada said about his books, man will receive the book and he'll say, all right, let me see what this fool has written. And they get benefit. So let's hope that narrative gets broken again and again, and a better destination happens for the poor conditioned souls, myself included. Hare Krishna.
Jai, Jai, Sadhu, Sadhu. Well said. I'm reading now in the Lilamrita. Prabhupada is speaking to some police personnel in Chicago. He had just read a Time magazine article that really caught his attention. The headline was "Crime, Why and What to Do." And Prabhupada saw that this is a very good platform for preaching Krishna consciousness. And when he presented this idea to the Lieutenant Mosey, the public relations man for the Chicago Police Department, he was saying that we can fix your crime problem. It's not just a matter of making laws and then punishing people that break the laws because they just commit the same crime again more often than not. The real thing is to change the heart, and that we can do. If you follow this process, the heart will change. And the man, Lieutenant Mosey, said, that's a tall order. And Prabhupada said, no, it's very simple. And he gave him some prasadam. So that was his plan, to change the hearts, to intervene in a very big way, as Panchatattva Prabhu was saying. That's what's required. And yes, Saraswati Mata says, an existence where you forget Krishna is in itself a hellish life. That's a fact. Panchatattva Prabhu, would you like to pick up the narrative here with text number 2, unless there's more?
Sure.
Yeah.
Unless there's more commentary, because it is a really interesting verse. If anybody else has anything to say. So, and thank you, Mahesh Pandit. That was really nice. Okay. Kalalam Tvekaratrena Panksharatrena Budbudam Tasahina Tukarkandhu Peshandam Vatataparam. On the first night, the sperm and ovum mix, and on the 5th night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, it gradually turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The body of the soul develops in 4 different ways according to its different sources. One kind of body, that of the trees and plants, kind of body grows from perspiration, as with flies, germs, and bugs. The 3rd kind of body develops from eggs, and the 4th develops from an embryo. This verse indicates that after emulsification of the ovum and sperm, the body gradually develops either into a lump of flesh or into an egg, as the case may be. In the case of birds, it develops into an egg, and in the case of animals and human beings, it develops into a lump of flesh. Back in the day, in the early, late 1970s, early 80s, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, under the able guidance of Swarup Damodar, became Bhakti Swarup Damodar, became Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. They would publish these, I don't know if you call them monographs, or they're like little pamphlet papers on different science issues and the Vedic perspective. And it was explained in one of those. I used to love collecting them, and I don't know what happened to them. I think someone borrowed them and never got them back. I had a whole stack of these wonderful articles. But the author was explaining how until I think it's as late as the 1930s, this process of the development of the embryo in the womb was not well understood at all by modern science. But they were pointing to this particular chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam to note how advanced their understanding was of the development of the child within the womb, the fetus, if you will, in the womb. How each stage corresponds correctly with our now, with our current understanding. So that understanding was there 5,000 and many thousand more years than that ago. It's also interesting to note that, you know, we think of this this journey of the soul of the living entity in terms of one body after another body after another body, and that of course is correct. But there are also these stages involved in the development of the next body and the next body and the next body. The living entity gets, like, talk about confinement or reduction, if you will, in terms of material sense. Now he's, you know, prior to his being carried by this semen to the ovum, he's in a particle of semen. You know, that's the living entity's position. And then the semen unites with the ovum, and now his body consists of a bubble, and then a lump the size of a plum some days later, and then gradually it's developing. And, you know, depending upon the type of body he has acquired, if it's the human body, there's, you know, the rudimentary circulatory system, the rudimentary heart, the rudimentary appendages like fingers, they all start developing at different stages. And, you know, you can find magazines or videos that glorify this mystery of life and how miraculous it is, and the development of the child in the womb, and they make it sound so, it's like they'll play a crescendo of classical music to describe this great and wonderful and mystical thing, and that aspect is certainly there. But here in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll also understand that for the living entity, it's actually a great deal of suffering. This is not our real home. It's not our real position to have these material bodies, to be stuck in one body after another, to be kicked out one after another, to identify with this family and then identify with another family, to have hundreds and thousands of previous parents and hundreds of thousands of more in the future in different species of life. That is not who we are. So the Bhagavatam's clarion call is Jeev Jago. Let's put it in Bengali. Wake up. Don't continue sleeping in the lap of the witch Maya, but try to understand your position through the instructions and guidance of the spiritual master Shastras. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for that. Hare Krishna. And Praveen Krishna Prabhu adds Bhagavatam embryology, which is what it is.
That was great.
Even before that, how the soul comes into a semen. I think it falls down through the rain, goes into the some kind of corpse, and then we eat it. And this, because the size of the soul is so small, 1/10,000 of the size of the hair, top of the hair. So you can imagine. But it's individual. Even though it's so small, it's individual. It's very hard to understand these things. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good point. I remember reading somewhere how from when the soul falls from, when the living entity falls from say the planets of the demigods, he falls that way through the rain, and then it's taken up in grain.
Mm-hmm.
The grains are consumed and then becomes, like that. It's pretty far out. Or that the soul, the living entity comes to the human form of life, and his previous birth, his previous form is depending upon the particular mode of nature. He may have been in the body of a cow, or the body of a lion or a tiger, is a rajasic, and tamasic is a mode of a monkey, the body of a monkey. We've heard all of these things before and marveled at the the pathway that the living entity can take to get to the human form of life.
And all this is done by Daiva Netrena. Can you imagine that? They have a big department, I guess. Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of the unfathomable path of the living entity, since you are reading Panchatattva Prabhu, maybe you can field Praveen Krishna Prabhu's question, which is there a certain free will of the jiva involved with him taking shelter of a particular father and mother?
That I cannot say. I can only say that that whatever will is expressed in the previous life by that living entity's actions and desires. That determination, it's Daiva Netrena, it's not Atma Netrena.
That's
so
right.
I do not believe that's it. Now, there are cases where, like, for example, we read how a very advanced yogi can deliberately transfer himself to a higher planet. And of course, great Vaishnava in his purified state, due to his sincere engagement and due to the Lord's great mercy, he can go back home, back to Godhead. So that's certainly somewhat, he's attracted to the Lord's mercy and the mercy of his spiritual master. So that's there. But generally speaking, it's Daiva Netrena.
That's the main thing here. We don't have a choice. You just go according to your karma, and that's it. You don't have a choice. Yeah. You have a choice before that, when you were doing something, while you were on a planet. You had a choice then. But afterwards, it's all karma netrena.
Yeah, and in the typical ignorance in Kali Yuga, it's practically speaking destination unknown.
Destination unknown, right?
And that's where the fear comes in, because you don't know. It's you just all you see is the black, fade to black, and you think that's the absolute end, and it's very. So yeah, and Praveen Krishna Prabhu adds here in the chat a chunky portion of Bhagavad Gita 8.3, which I'll read. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Vedic sacrificial process. On the sacrificial altar, 5 kinds of offerings are made into 5 kinds of fire. The 5 kinds of fire are conceived of as the heavenly planets, clouds, the earth, man and woman, and the 5 kinds of sacrificial offerings are faith, the enjoyer on the moon, rain, grains, and semen. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. Thanks, Praveen Krishna Prabhu.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good quote because it does point out that the living entity can be determinative of his next birth, at least going to the heavenly planets too. But then that's a temporary situation, and he falls down.
Prabhupada compares the whole thing to a grand Ferris wheel. You go up, it looks nice from the top, then you go down, not so good. And then you go up, and then you come down. Hare Krishna. We have a little bit of time, and we have some verses that are moving kind of quickly without purports. It's going to see whether Priyanka Mataji is available to read maybe a couple until we get to a decent sized purport. Is that possible, Mataji? Or if not, love to hear from Shara and Doug if one of them or both of them
Sorry,
would like.
Prabhuji.
Yeah. Yes, are you there? Good. Are you able to read?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. So we are in
Text to you.
Yes, text number 3. Yes, exactly.
मासेन तो शिरो द्वाभ्यां भाव अङ्घ्रि आदि विग्रह न लोहास्ते चर्माणि विंचित्रो उद्भवस्त्रिभिः. In the course of a month, a head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. Text 4 also, Prabhuji.
Yes, please go ahead until we reach a purport, if you don't mind.
चतुर्भिर्धातवः सप्त पञ्चभिः उद्भवः षड्भिर्जरायुणा वीतः वृक्षो भ्राम्यते दक्षिणे. Within 4 months from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt, and at the end of 6 months, the fetus, enclosed by the amnion, begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. When the body of the child is completely formed at the end of 6 months, the child, if he is male, begins to move on the right side, and if female, she tries to move on the left side. Here, Lord Kapildev is sharing some interesting details. And in the previous verse, I remember that when the tests are going on right now, there is a lot of technology that has come. There are ultrasounds, there are detailed tests, and then there is a gender test that happens at 12 weeks. So here also it is mentioned the details that the organ of generation actually they appear by the end of 3 months. At that time there was, we say that technology has advanced now, but actually we were more advanced previously than we are right now. Through the power of Vedic mantras. And thank you, Guruji.
Thank you so much, Mata. Yes, I appreciate your point that we consider the physical technologies so impressive, but the knowledge that we get from the physical technologies is incomplete. And what we're being given here is the complete knowledge. The problem is we don't just accept it. That's too easy.
Yes.
It's too easy to just hear it and say, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Doug and Shar, are you able to read a verse? Text number 5. Is that a possibility?
Sure.
Oh, cool.
Matur jagdana panadyar edhad datur asamate shete vinmutrayor garte sa jantur sambhave. Translation. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Purport. In the Markandeya Purana, it is said that in the intestine of the mother, the umbilical cord, which is known as apyayani, joins the mother to the abdomen of the child, and through this passage, the child within the womb accepts the mother's assimilated foodstuff. In this way, the child is fed by the mother's intestine within the womb and grows from day to day. The statement of the Markandeya Purana about the child's situation within the womb is exactly corroborated by modern medical science, and thus the authority of the Puranas cannot be disproved, as is sometimes attempted by the Mayavadi philosophers. Since the child depends completely on the assimilated foodstuff of the mother, during pregnancy there are restrictions on the food taken by the mother. Too much salt, chili, onion, and similar food is forbidden for the pregnant mother because the child's body is too delicate and new for him to tolerate such pungent food. Restrictions and precautions to be taken by the pregnant mother, as enunciated in the Smriti scriptures of Vedic literature, are very useful. We can understand from the Vedic literature how much care is taken to beget a nice child in society. The Garbhadana ceremony before sexual intercourse was compulsory for persons in the higher grades of society, and it is very scientific. Other processes recommended in the Vedic literature during pregnancy are also very important. To take care of the child is the primary duty of the parents, because if such care is taken, society will be filled with good population to maintain the peace and prosperity of the society, country, and human race. It makes sense. I never really thought about how the Garbhadam Samskara was done before, and it seems like it was the normal thing to do if you were trying to have a kid. But it's interesting to think of a time when that was normal, and now it's quite the opposite. It's kind of, whatever you're comfortable with, that's how you do it. Yeah, that's all I have on this.
Thanks so much. Yeah, whatever you come makes me think of an advertisement for cigarettes. You've come a long way, baby. And now it's, more and more common for people to just smoke during pregnancy. At least it was during the generation in which I was born. Hare Krishna. Yes, Panchatattva Prabhu, please go ahead.
In ISKCON, our performance of Garbhadam Samskara was basically to be, of course, situated properly in our regulative principles, and prior to conceiving the child, which is an attempt made once a month at the appropriate time in the wife's fertility cycle to chant 50 rounds. Now, I know that the Garbhajan Samskara of Vedic times was a little different, if not more elaborate. I was wondering if someone, some educated person in our Sangha could talk about what that Garbhajan Samskar actually, what it looked like. Of course, we hear here that it was compulsory for persons in the higher grades of society. So I'm assuming that meant in particular Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So does anyone have some comment who would know something about that? Because I'm interested. I haven't really studied it in depth.
Actually, they focus on main thing on chanting. And being in Kali Yuga, we don't have too many things to go by, but mostly chanting before you do anything. And
yeah, that's our system,
right,
given us by Srila Prabhupada. But I think there was something more than that, at least, or something more expansive than that. Of course, again, like as you said, for us that's the core of our purificatory function, chanting the holy names. I'm just kind of curious as to what that Garbhajan Samskara looked like, say, 5,000 years ago.
Right. Yeah, if you chant nicely and follow 4 regulative principle, that's all you have to do.
It would be a research project for sure.
That's right.
Anybody who has that particular, unabridged edition of the Manu Smriti can delve deeply in there and find out all those things that we cannot possibly imagine doing here.
And also, you read loudly, you chant loudly, so the person in the womb can hear. And like Prahlad Maharaj heard from Narad Muni. So I guess if we read and chant, that has a lot of effect on the coming soul. Yeah.
I remember hearing somewhere where Prabhupada said that he was asked about, I believe it's about the Manusmriti. There may have been another time he was asked about all the details in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, and he said that if you knew all of these different things that you would have to follow, you would just faint. So, our by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our process is much more streamlined, direct, clear. One could say abridged, but not in the sense of weakened, because the power of the holy name is so strong coming in this movement, and the power of devotional service. But anyway,
thank God. Yes. Thank you, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes. Very nice.
Speaking of kirtan, Panchatattva Prabhu, are you able and willing?
God, I feel like I've been speaking too much in this class. Where do you want me to lead? Isn't there someone else who can?
Who else? Let's see. We have Krishna Kante Prabhu. Yes.
Yeah, Krishna Kante Prabhu. Thank you, though. I always love to chant. Krishna Kante, I like to hear his chanting. It's so sweet.
Just quickly here, Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, the pregnant mother was to be situated in Prasuti Griha, maternity home, surrounded by other ladies. Younger girls would serve her, and elders would guide, comfort her, and ceremonies, bringing in relatives and blessings by charities to Brahmanas. She would be kept happy always.
Yeah, thank you, Praveen Krishna. I had a feeling that Praveen Krishna would be able to do some research on this subject.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, jai Om Vishnu Pad, Pramsa Pariyat Jagacharya Stuta, Sata Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Das Thakur ki jai, ISKCON founder, Sharya, Savior of the world, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prem Se Ho, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Samveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, Jai Sri Guru and Guranga, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Das Maharaj ki jai.
Jai Krishna Kanteya Prabhu ki jai. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mahesh Pandit. Thank you, Panchatattva. Thank you, Dana, Lakshmana, Meena, Murai Gupta Prabhu, Praveen Krishna, Priyanka, Shara. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends ki jai.
Thank you, Ekendra
Samaveta
Prabhu.
Bhakta Brinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, everyone. Be well. See you tomorrow, Lord willing, or sooner.
Krishna Krishna. Thank you, Kendra Prabhu.